Hey, are you ready to grow your business? You have checked out the number one resource for business leaders, entrepreneurs, startup founders, and managers. And we're going to teach you how to grow and scale your business with real actionable steps. There's no fluff in this podcast. It's just good advice. Check out this episode. If you're a first-time listener, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy this episode, leave us a 5-star review. Sit tight. Here comes your good advice. What is up, everybody? This is episode number 100. Man, I cannot believe it. I mean, really, 100 episodes of the Good Advice Podcast, formerly known as the Blake Benz Podcast. It's a much less obnoxious name, but still all the great quality content that you've come to expect in the podcast. And what I wanted to do today, man, we're celebrating. We're celebrating that 100th episode. And there's a lot of energy around that. I mean, people have told me, when you hit episode 100 for a podcast, that's when things really seem to kick into gear. I don't know how true that is, but what I do want to do is I want to talk about the podcast in general, where we've sort of landed for the podcast. This is kind of like a family talk episode. We're talking shop a little bit, talking with the fam. You guys who have supported me a long, long time. Maybe you've listened to the episodes that I've been putting out for quite a while now. First of all, for you guys, I want to say thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you. I just can't believe the amount of people who have just been tuning in, listening, checking out the podcast. I mentioned this probably, a few weeks ago, but in early February, the podcast broke the top 50, landing at number 38 in the entire United States for the category of entrepreneurship. And, I never have really thought of myself as like an entrepreneurial guru. In fact, I make fun of gurus most often, but it's kind of cool to know that, hey, whatever I'm talking about, there are people who they're getting something good out of it. Otherwise, I guess they wouldn't be listening to it. And hey, if it's your first time listening to the show, if you just stumbled across this podcast, or maybe you saw a social media post and you're like, I'm going to check this guy out. I'm going to size this guy up and figure out exactly what he's talking about. Let me tell you, welcome. I'm going to begin now doing my Jedi mind trick of getting you to subscribe to the podcast and tune in with me every week. We update this podcast 2 to 3 times per week. And that hasn't always been the case, but as people's energy around the podcast has grown, so has my desire to make it as consistent as possible. So what I want to do today, in celebration of the podcast, I want to do a look back and talk about sort of where the podcast has come from, how I've put this together. I also want to talk about one important aspect that really caused me to start my business a year and a half ago. And I want to encourage you, wherever you are today, whatever business you're in, whether you're running your own business, whether you're working for somebody else, I want to encourage you. And I want to talk about really how do you anchor yourself in life? How do you find your purpose in life? It's nothing hokey. It's nothing cliche. It's nothing cheesy, but I want to talk out of my own personal experience and really some of the unhappiness and frankly, the depression that I have gone through in the past in my life, and how I've tried to create pathways out of that to feeling fulfilled, to feeling happy, to feeling rewarded. And nothing we're going to talk about is really going to be very superficial. I'm not really going to be talking about like, how can you budget and eliminate debt to be a happier person? I want to talk about really how this podcast came to be, how the business came to be, and some things that you can be doing today to make yourself feel more, and I use this word intentionally. I keep thinking of the word, you feeling anchored. You feeling like you're attached to something, that you're connected to something, like your day-to-day life has meaning. And it's an important topic for me because I have felt so often in my life really aimless and directionless, and what the heck am I doing? And there was always like some things that pushed me and drove me. My faith is so important to me. And that's a big aspect of what I do every day. but really kind of like, okay, how do I specifically fit in life? What do I specifically bring to the table? I think that's an important question. And the more that I talk to people, the more that I engage with people, the more that I have conversations, whether it's young people, man, even people who are older, I've recognized that there is a wide majority of us who feel disconnected. They feel out of rhythm. They feel out of sync. And I use those words intentionally because it's not just about being unhappy. It's like you look at your circumstances in life and it's like, man, this isn't what I thought my circumstances would be. This isn't what I expected. This isn't even maybe what I wanted out of my life. Things are just playing out differently than I thought they would. And maybe if it's not even a deep rooted feeling, sometimes it can be something as simple as, frankly, the kind of job, the kind of work I thought I would be doing today is not what I am doing. In fact, I talked to a handful of people who we talk about this concept of, what's your purpose in life and what drives you? Man, and even let's even pull it out from, the super serious question. I've even asked questions like, man, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? And it's amazing how many people, smart people, talented people, incredible people, how many people tell me, Blake, I have no idea. I don't know. I have no idea. It's like a lot of us, we're kind of just bumping into each other. We're kind of just figuring out, man, I didn't kill anyone. I didn't commit any crimes. I at least put some money in the bank account. I guess I'm doing okay. And we live this life that is it's just strange. It's weird. It's like, it's almost like here's how I like to think of it. And this is some random analogy that kind of just came to mind. And so I don't know if this is going to land or not. But you know how like those, I don't know if you ever had like a locker or like you ever had like one of those combination locks, and not like the one where you spin the dial, but the one that has like the prongs that stick out. It's like the 4 numbers on this lock and you like rotate the prongs until it sets in the right combination. Well, I've been watching this YouTube video, this YouTube series. He's called The Lock-Picking Lawyer. This guy is like incredible. His videos are always really short. You should check this out on YouTube. And by the way, I apologize in advance because after watching this, you're going to be addicted just like I am. What this guy does, his videos are all so short. They're about a minute long. And what he does is he picks locks, which doesn't sound very exciting, but he takes like these really incredible locks. Like he'll grab an Amazon lock that costs like $150 and he'll pick it with like a piece of metal or like with a paper clip. Or I saw one, it was like a $200 lock and he picked it by just dropping it on its corner and it just popped open. And so he's showing how, some of these locks really aren't legitimate. But one of the things he does in his videos is he'll take apart the lock and he'll show how it works. Well, he was showing one of these combination style locks and he was showing how with the dial, with the rotating pins, with the little prongs that come out, whenever you're cycling through the numbers, what's happening is on the inside of the lock, there's this little metal prong, just like there's a prong on the outside, there's a metal prong on the inside. And as you're rotating the lock, there is a deep groove where when you get to the right number, that prong will fit into that groove. And so if there's 4 numbers on a lock, there's 4 grooves. And so you're rotating to get the right combination so that all 4 are going to fit right into the correct groove. And if it's the wrong number, it's just sitting on the metal or it's sitting on, like a fake groove to mislead lock pickers like this gentleman. And I was thinking about this and I was like, man, that's really like what our life is like. Which even saying that out loud, you're kind of like, you're probably thinking, wait, what? But here's man, if I can just go full blown cheesy mode for a second, let's really think about this for a second. Imagine that you are a lock, or there is, and again, as a spiritual person, I don't think that we are here by accident. I'm a Christian. I feel like I believe that there is a God, and a God created us, and He created us for a specific purpose and specific good works. And I'm very open about that. And amazingly enough, in our outrage culture, it's amazing how often I share that with people, and they're like, "That's awesome, cool," and we have great conversation about it. But in thinking of that being my belief system, everybody has like this purpose or like this ability to influence. And whenever we talk about ability to influence, a lot of times we think about being on stage, we think about influencer culture, like how many followers do you have? None of this stuff matters. In fact, all of that is, that's where we go typically in our minds, but it couldn't be further from the truth in terms of influence. And so we have the ability to influence people around us positively or negatively. A lot of times we don't, because we don't realize how simple it can be to influence someone. In fact, there could be someone in your life right now that a simple phone call, a simple word of encouragement could totally transform the way they look at life. A lot of times we don't do that though, because the outcomes are, we don't always hear about them. And so again, when we think about influence, a lot of times we think about like these big, massive things that we can do. So get that out of your mind right off the bat. We're talking about literally the significant impact you can have on your neighbor, on the person around you, what have you. And so there is a gifting about you. There is a potential that you have inside you. There are things that you bring to the table, and this isn't hokey, this isn't cheesy, this isn't cliche. Very literally, there's no wasted energy in our universe. And so there's not any wasted energy in you being created. And so you have a specific level of talent, potential. You bring something to the table that someone else does not bring to the table. You are unique. All you have to do is look at your thumbprint to know that you are different, unique, whatever. Some people are a little bit more unique than others. They are our special weird people, but you are, adequately unique enough to make a specific, meaningful influence and an impact on people around you. Going back to the lock, thinking about your life when people are not walking in their, quote, walking in their calling, when they're not walking in their values, when they're not walking in the awareness of what they bring to the table, that lock remains closed. But as you take time to figure out who you are and what you offer, and man, what's so sweet and special about you, that's how you move those prongs into those grooves to open the lock and unleash what you're capable of contributing. And I'm something that I like to talk about, especially with clients that I work with, because I don't do any like life coaching, and this sounds very life coaching-esque. But something that I've always been very proud of my clients is I'm very practical, I'm very actionable, I'm very tangible. And so I'm working with the business owner, when I'm working with the leader, it's very little like I wouldn't sit down with the leader and like, okay, let's talk about your childhood and how it informs your perspective as a boss today. It's really nothing like that. It's more of the way that conversation would happen would be, hey, all of your employees are quitting. They hate you. What has happened in your life to make you such a jerk to people? Or why do you think that's what leadership is? And so someone might mention, well, my dad was always really hard on me. He always had a no-nonsense approach. And so I take the same approach for my people. So then my follow-up would be, okay, let's try something else though. How's that working for you? Everyone just quit. So how's it working for you? So I try to be very actionable. I try to be very practical. And this lock analogy is no different. And so when we talk about like moving the prongs and getting it into the right grooves and getting yourself in sync and getting yourself anchored, I fully believe this only comes through an enormous amount of self-reflection and thinking. And frankly, and this is the scariest part, a willingness to change. So many people are not willing to change. And I think that many of us, if we asked ourselves in a vacuum, people would say, yes, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put in the work. I'm willing to, become a different person or, change my routine or what have you. But realistically speaking, the majority of people will not, they won't. In fact, I have a podcast episode on this called The Pain of Change. And it comes from, and this is attributed to so many different people, Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, whoever. But it's basically the concept is you will not change until the change of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. Because, it's painful to change, but until it's more painful to stay where you are. You're never going to be any different. So when we think about unlocking this lock, I've noticed that an enormous amount of people are simply unaware of what drives them, who they are, and how they fit. I talked to a 40-year-old guy. We were having a conversation on his work, and he was unhappy. And I said, okay, what do you want to do? What would make you happy? And his immediate answer was an extremely common 3-word answer: I don't know. And I'm thinking, if you haven't figured it out by the time you're 40, when are you going to figure it out? When are you going to take the time to figure it out? And that, those 3 words are the same 3 words I hear from the 18-year-old, from the 19-year-old, from the 20-year-old, hear from people in their 50s. And it's something to feel guilty about, but it should be a sign. It should be something that if you find yourself saying those words, it should be a heads up. You are on track for a life full of regret and unfulfillment. Man, what a charge. That's some heavy words there. That's a heavy accusation. But all I can say is I've never met anyone who had no idea what fulfills them, what drives them, and who also said, man, I've never been happier. What I typically see is people who, when they figure out what that sweet spot is, man, they just blossom, they bloom. I mean, it's like they come to life. It's incredible. And I want to talk about that for myself, because here's the thing. A lot of times when we have this conversation on unlocking the lock and walking out your calling and being in your rhythm, being anchored to your sweet spot, to what makes you you, a lot of times what happens is we immediately attach that to a job description. Like, what's the job that I need to go do that will then scratch the itch of who I am and the problems that I'm having, or the problems I want to resolve for people. And that's part of it, but the job description actually has nothing to do. I mean, it's a side conversation. Here's what I mean is that when you figure out your why, when you answer the why that drives you, the uniqueness of who you are and how that contributes to the people around us, it literally does not matter what job you do. So let me talk about this a little bit more for myself personally. So when I was a kid, I went to this summer camp and had an incredible experience. The whole MO of this summer camp is that every kid who comes here needs to leave feeling individualized and special and that they matter. And this would go all the way down to the detail of, if there'd be like a baseball activity, the counselors, their whole job, it's not just to facilitate the baseball game, but it's to make sure that a kid gets to be the superstar. So what might happen is you have a counselor who's out, at first base, and this kid who maybe they've never played, they don't even know how to hold the bat. They don't even know how to swing the bat. They're putting their body in front of the ball for whatever reason. So the kid finally, by the grace of God, hits the ball and it runs down the line to first base. Well, the counselor at first base might pick up the ball and then accidentally drop it or stumble over themselves and fall down. And so the kid makes it to first base. And I've heard, having been a counselor at this camp, having been one of the camp directors at this camp, I was there forever. I've heard kids say, wow, I've never won anything before in my life, or I've never hit the ball before ever. And so it's this certain sweetness. It's this moment where a kid who maybe they see themselves as a loser in every other aspect, they finally get to be a winner. Now, for some of you who your parents didn't love you enough, you are already frustrated by this story because you're thinking, Blake, that is what is wrong with our culture today. Those are the participation trophies that we hate. How dare you? You're pitying this kid. And I really, my message to you is, dude, you need to get out more. You need to cut the crap. Stop being so intense and over the top. We're talking about an 8-year-old and an 8-year-old's confidence and what that can do for, someone down the road. There is a winner of the baseball game, and that is what it is. But it's those small, sweet moments where a counselor notices, okay, here's an opportunity to make a kid feel that they matter, that they aren't insignificant. Well, so I was that kid. I felt like people, and I really struggled to find my footing growing up, in the sense of I didn't know how I fit. I didn't even know why I existed. Struggled with suicidal thoughts, literally, as young as 12 or 13 years old. And I remember going to this camp, and I think I was maybe 12. I was around that age, 12 or 13, and just thinking, wow, I matter. Like, what, I have something to offer, and I matter. That's like the one message I got out of this. And so here's the point that I'm getting at. Whenever this concept came alive in me, what I found to be my why was, as someone who felt so lost, I thought to myself, I want people to not feel the way that I felt before now. I want them to find their why. I want them to find their answer. And so that became the driving force. I didn't know what consulting was. I didn't even know what that type of business was. But here's my point, is it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter what the job is, as long as you find that you are walking out what your calling is. You're unlocking what it is that, is your unique flavor, your spice of life, the thing you bring to the table. And at that young of age, I had no idea. I had a glimpse of it, though. And I think in all of us in our lives, if we think about the times we were happiest isn't even the right word. The times we were most fulfilled, we can think of those moments, those glimpses of, okay, there was something about that time that really made me happy. And so I started to grow up, started to get into later in high school, got into college. I was a pre-med student in college. And that's what I thought I was supposed to do. But at the same time, I really wasn't interested in it. I had people who I really respected. I had mentors who were like, man, you never really talk about medicine. Like, I don't really see you like reading about medicine. I don't really see you sharing about medicine. Like, why are you pre-med? And I was like, I don't know. This is how jacked up our college education system is. I was like, I don't know. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's what I was doing. But I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, a best friend at the time. We had just grabbed, it's college life. I think we had just grabbed Taco Bell. And so we were just like going to town on, I think back then it was like $1 tacos or something. So we were like going to town on these tacos, and, he has like a mouthful of his burrito, and like in the middle of a big bite, he's like, man, so like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, well, I'm pre-med, I guess I'm going to be a doctor. And he was like, okay, well, like, is that what makes you happy? And right before he asked this question, he had talked about something he was going through. I can't remember if he had like been dumped or if he was like having a relationship issue. I don't remember what it was, but I gave him some advice. And I said, I think this is what you need to do. And then I gave him some encouragement. I said, man, you're awesome. And you have so much to offer. You're going to bounce back. It's no big deal. But so he asked this question, what do you want to do with your life? And I remember, and again, it's one of those glimpses. It was a glimpse in the moment where I thought, man, honestly, like encouraging you, like that is what made me happy. I think that's what I would want to do with my life. But like, who's a professional encourager, right? Like what is that job, right? All I knew though was that being a doctor wouldn't scratch that itch. And so what ended up happening was I decided to go be a teacher. And unfortunately, not to, frustrate any fellow teachers that I worked with, I didn't really actually care too much about, obviously I wanted them to learn the content and be smart and, actually get an education. And I made sure all those things happen. But what really drove me, even as a teacher, and I was working in inner city Houston, I was there for 3 years. And before that, I was working in the Mississippi Delta. I remember all I cared about was I want these kids to feel like they matter and that they have something to offer, and I want them to feel motivated for the rest of their life to go out and make an impact. And so that's what drove me as a teacher. I had some really awful bosses as a teacher. I saw some really great talent leave, and I thought, okay, I think I can do something here. I don't think this is the right way we should approach leadership. So I moved up to Northwest Arkansas. I got the job at the consulting firm that I was working at and immediately started doing leadership development. and facilitation and executive coaching. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I get to basically encourage people for a living and give them very direct, real advice. And something that's always been true about me is I have always been, I don't want to say, I think when I was younger, people would say I was very abrasive, because the concept I didn't understand was I would give advice in the absence of trust. And so someone would be like, whoa, I didn't really, you and I just met and you're telling me what I need to be doing differently. You're kind of coming across, frankly, pretty douchey. And so I had to learn those concepts. But one of the things that I figured out was in the consulting gig, wow, I get to give people advice on their leadership, and I get to give people wisdom on how they can be better bosses and manage their people better and all of these things. Well, so long story short, I ended up leaving that job and I started Good Advice a couple of years ago. And here's what I'm getting at is me kind of solidifying my why. Amazingly enough, at this consulting gig, I found myself extremely unhappy and I found myself extremely depressed again. And I was trying to figure out why it was that way. I had long said it was a dream job. I had long said that this is what I was called to do. And now all of a sudden I was unfulfilled again. Looking back, thinking about, okay, what caused me to quit and start my own company? The simplest way to describe it is I could envision clients I was working with who was paying us to check the box, but who had no intention of real, meaningful change. I also don't know, part of me, I felt like I had hit my limit on growth, and I didn't know if I was capable of making the impact that I wanted to make unless I went out and hyper accelerated my own growth by doing something like starting my own business. And so I left that company, started my own business, and now, here we are again. I think this is my dream job. I think that this is what I'm called to do. But I know that my central why is creating real change for people and allowing them to make the impact they want to make. And so clients that I'm working with, these are people who what drives them is more than just pure numbers. Now, having said that, the majority of our conversations are on revenue and how do you make more money and how do you get more customers. But, just like customers are thinking if they want to choose me, at the same time, I'm thinking about, do I want to choose them? Is this somebody who's honest? They have integrity? Are they offering something that they believe in, that they think is going to make someone's life better? And this isn't like, I work with some nonprofits, but it doesn't have to be nonprofit. I mean, it could be someone who, they sell used cars to someone. They're a car lot, and they, for them, it's, we get to provide a means for people to travel and to get to their job and do it in a secure, consistent way. So it doesn't have to be something very fluffy or feel good. But it has to be an owner who's serious about, I'm trying to make a difference and I'm trying to grow something that impacts people in a positive way. And so where I am currently is I'm trying to grow and develop this thing to really grow my influence. And again, to make people's lives more meaningful. That's always been my driver. That's always been the thing that, it sort of like lights the fire under my rear. And I say all that because my encouragement to you is until you find your why, you won't be happy, you won't be fulfilled. And I promise you're going to have that lock tightly secured around your potential until you make the decisions, the choices to move the prongs and get them into the right place. And I think this is what we do when we talk about the pain of change is we are very passive for the most part. In fact, the majority of people that I talk to on this topic, what they tell me is I'm just going to wait another year, or I'm going to wait another few years, or I'm going to see where I'm at in 5 years. And all I can think about is that is 5 years wasted. What I can tell you, I can promise you, in my young age of 32 years, what I can promise you is that life is so random and it's inconsequential, really, of your actions. It's going to continue whether you make decisions or not. Everyone else is still going to continue on. And what life's going to do is it is so random and chaotic, and there's so much noise. Your life circumstances will never move those prongs into their right positions on its own. Because that's really what we do. We want to take away the personal accountability, and we assume if I just wait a little bit longer, then I will be in rhythm. Then I will be in sync. Then my life will, I'll have that sync in my step where I feel like I'm walking out my calling. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. And if that is your perspective, just a friendly warning, you are heading towards a life of unfulfillment. What you need to do is be aggressive in creating the circumstances you want out of life. And root that in what really drives you, in really who you are, and what you have to offer to influence people. I had a guy who he told me his why was he wanted to be able to buy nice things. I said, that's a shallow and meaningless why, and it won't fulfill you. Find a new why. And you may be thinking like, how, is it really can you really tell people it's not their why? And I was like, yeah, I mean, that is pure superficiality. There's no substance there, and it's going to just disappoint you because once you have the stuff, it's going to be, okay, what now? It's like Tom Brady when he won his 5th ring and he was like, I feel like something's still missing. This is the guy who has achieved things that 99% of NFL players will never achieve. And here he is saying, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's something else. I guess I need to play more ball. I guess I need to go after another ring. And so think about your why and then be aggressive in putting those prongs into place. That might mean that you need to quit your job. It might mean that you need to start something on the side. Maybe a little side hustle. You don't have to like Jerry Maguire this thing. You don't have to go quit tomorrow. But think about it. Let's say you need the stability of your job. You have a family, you have kids, but you've always wanted to go do this thing. What would it look like to peel off 1 hour a day or a couple hours every other day? Or heck, a Saturday a month? I'm going to dedicate one Saturday a month and work the whole day. I'm going to do a half day, and it's all going to be dedicated towards this thing that drives me. And you may not figure it out on the first go, and that's okay. For me, I thought, well, I think my why is fulfilled through being a doctor. In hindsight, I would have been a terrible doctor because I didn't even like it. But I had to walk that out and figure out what exactly it was that clicked for me. But you can't do that if you don't ever give yourself the space and time to actually do it, figure it out, and make it happen. Find your why, or you will be lost the rest of your life. Heavy words, right? I don't know. Man, I would love to hear from you. If you have figured out your why, if you you're walking in the rhythm of your calling, I want to hear from you. Shoot me an email, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Let's encourage one another. And if you are trying to figure it out, if you're trying to to figure out, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure, here's what I will offer you. I don't do any kind of life coaching. I'm not going to sell you anything. But if you are looking for someone to bounce ideas off of, to try to find some greater clarity, you're trying to find that rhythm, I will, for free, I will sit down with you and I will be your sounding board. Tell me what drives you. Tell me what energizes you. Tell me what you envision doing. But here's the only caveat. Here's the only thing I'm going to ask you to do. I do not want my time to be wasted. And so going back to being aggressive with change, I've realized that people sometimes, when they share how they're feeling, they're just looking to be heard. They're not really looking to change. And so if you're going to call me, if you're going to email me, if you're going to inbox me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, then as I act as your sounding board, I'm going to ask you to actually change, and I'm going to hold you accountable to it. Don't message me if you have no intention of changing. And hey, even beyond that, if you're looking to start a business, you're trying to grow your business, maybe you've been running a business for a while and it just isn't quite where you want it to go, I can definitely help you with that as well. Shoot me a message. We'll get it happening. Hey, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Again, I can't believe it. Number 38 in entrepreneurship in the entire U.S. It's incredible. Make sure that you are continuing to follow the podcast. We got to start working on our next 100 episodes. And again, I am so grateful for your support. I'm so grateful for you helping me out. If you want to continue to contribute to the podcast, we do have a monthly Patreon patron program. You can find that at patreon.podbean.com/goodadvice. For as little as $5 a month, you can support the podcast so that the quality continues to improve and be great. And hey, if you're a business and you want to advertise on the podcast, I have another option for you too. I'm proud to say it's an ad-free podcast, but I would love to support and promote some incredible businesses, especially those who have been checking out the podcast and getting benefits from it. Happy 100 episodes wherever you are today. Man, have an amazing week. Continue to push out, grind out, and most of all, find your why. I'll catch you later. See ya.